Okay, let's unpack this. Does this sound familiar at all? Your heart races every time someone asks for a favor. The words, sure, I'd love to help, just sort of tumble out before your brain can even catch up. And, well, next thing you know, you're looking at late night project reviews, weekend volunteering, endless coffee meetups you never really wanted. You've said yes until exhaustion just creeps into your bones because the thought of disappointing someone, it just felt worse than running yourself ragged. Leaves that knot in your stomach, doesn't it? And this, like, silent resentment starts building as your calendar fills with commitments that just drain your soul.
Yeah, and what's truly fascinating looking at the sources we've dived into today is this idea that saying no isn't inherently selfish.
Yeah.
It's actually sacred. It's really not about pushing people away. It's more about, drawing closer to your own truth, protecting your own vital energy. So this deep dive will explore exactly what shifts, from those subtle mindset changes right through to practical, actionable tools. Tools that can absolutely transform your relationships and, importantly, restore your energy.
Right. So, our mission for this deep dive is really to equip you, our listener, with the knowledge to say no gracefully and to stand firm without that shadow of guilt following you home, whether you're, navigating demanding work projects or those tricky family obligations. So, let's start with what I think so many of us wrestle with. Why does saying no feel so incredibly difficult, almost impossible sometimes? Our sources really dive deep into the psychology of this guilt. I mean, one author shared their own breakthrough in therapy, realizing it wasn't just about being too nice, but that their brain had literally wired itself for yes over years and years. What did that wiring actually look like?
It's a really powerful insight. What uh, psychological research reveals is that for many of us, every time we said yes as a child, maybe to a parent, a teacher, a friend, we often got positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Love, approval, maybe just a sense of safety. And these moments, they aren't trivial. They actually shape your brain's neural pathways. They create what psychologists call a survival response.
Mm,
So essentially saying yes became this really deeply ingrained strategy for belonging and avoiding perceived threats, even if those threats were just like mild disapproval.
okay. And then fast forward to being adults, and we face that immense weight of guilt. It just pushes us to avoid those uncomfortable feelings at all costs.
Yeah, our sources detail how that little voice whispers, selfish in your mind, your heart races at the mere thought of disappointing someone. And relationships can feel incredibly fragile, almost like conflict itself is a danger zone.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. The research shows that guilt, well, in this context anyway, it almost exclusively shows up when other people are involved. Right? That's why declining a friend's direct request could feel like a huge betrayal, yet you probably wouldn't feel a pang of guilt skipping some anonymous online event. One author put it perfectly. For years, many of us confused guilt with actual wrongdoing, like setting a boundary with some kind of moral failing. But the key realization here is that saying no isn't about rejection. It's actually a fundamental act of self-respect.
And here's something surprising from the research. What we often anticipate, this huge blow up or intense disappointment from others, it rarely actually happens. Most people, in reality, they barely blink when they hear no.
Mhm.
Studies indicate that the initial discomfort, it dissipates something like over 80% faster for the person hearing the no than the person giving it anticipates. So all that anxiety, all those sleepless nights worrying about reactions, most of it just lives in our heads. And this is particularly poignant for women, right? Society has historically pressured women into believing that saying no makes them difficult or, unlikable. But the sources really highlight this as a beautiful lie we absolutely need to unlearn.
Mhm. And this brings us nicely to developing a healthy no mindset, which is far more than just learning clever ways to decline invitations. It's really about rebuilding your entire relationship with yourself. A major breakthrough, as detailed in several sources, comes from reframing guilt, seeing it as an internal signal for self-respect. One therapist recounted asking a client, would you feel guilty about moving away from a burning building? And that simple question just fundamentally shifted their perspective. The data consistently reveals that those who struggle to accept a no from you, well, they often aren't respecting your boundaries in the first place. So your no then becomes less like slamming a door shut and more like opening windows, letting in fresh air for your own well-being.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective, and it connects directly to building emotional intelligence, which, yeah, the sources highlight as just critical for this journey. It's about treating emotions not as obstacles to suppress, but as valuable messages to decipher. It involves reading your own emotional weather patterns, noticing if stress clouds your judgment when asked for a favor, or if resentment builds up like a pressure front. It's also about stepping into others' shoes, but without losing your own footing, loving with healthy boundaries, learning to gracefully dance between empathy and self-protection.
Indeed. And studies confirm that emotional intelligence doesn't just improve personal relationships, it actually lights up creativity and brings deeper job satisfaction too.
Mm.
And while some individuals seem to have a natural aptitude for it, the good news is that it's absolutely a skill, something we can all develop and strengthen over time, which leads seamlessly into creating what our sources call personal value frameworks. Think of it not just as a list of what's important, but more like an internal compass. Yeah, one author described it as finding an ancient map to your own heart, a way to explicitly define what truly matters to you. Maybe it's freedom to create, or deep family connection, or impact through service. Whatever it is for you, research confirms that having these clear values guides us toward choices that serve both our souls and our communities. It makes no decisions almost intuitive because they align with your core.
Okay, so this framework, it emerges by first identifying your clear priorities, right? Those non-negotiables that fuel your purpose. Then it's about building like gentle fences around what matters most with clear decision criteria, a way to quickly assess if a new request actually aligns with your values. And finally, giving change room to bloom with an implementation timeline. Acknowledging that integrating these changes takes time and practice. It's not instant. So this isn't just another self-help tool. It's really permission to live authentically. When we consciously honor our values, I think no transforms, doesn't it? From that guilty whisper into a confident declaration of self-love and alignment.
And to truly make this shift stick, you need to actively build your no muscle through self-awareness. It's a daily practice, really, much like learning any new skill. It begins with honestly identifying your true priorities. If you picture your life as, say, a garden, you need to decide which flowers get the sunlight, and which ones, frankly, might need to wither so others can bloom properly. A particular study revealed that people who carefully tend their priorities, they bloom with stronger mental health and a more robust sense of self-worth. It's about listening to those quiet, sometimes really subtle whispers of your heart.
Mm-hmm. And it's also about recognizing your emotional triggers. Because for many, hands might still shake when saying no. It's because of that familiar ache, maybe, of letting someone down, or the ghost of opportunity slipping away, or relationships feeling fragile. Neuroscience tells us these triggers are as unique as fingerprints, and they often echo old wounds from childhood or past experiences, not present dangers. Understanding that distinction helps your adult self comfort that anxious inner child who just wants to belong.
Yes, and this is precisely where self-compassion becomes your lighthouse in those stormy seas of guilt. Extensive research confirms it's one of our strongest allies in building resilience. Just huge. Imagine treating yourself with the same gentle understanding and patience you'd offer your dearest friend facing similar struggles. It's about staying present with your feelings, but without judgment. Speaking to yourself with kindness. And remembering we're all just beautifully human, navigating complex emotions. These elements transform saying no from what feels like a guilty plea into a profound act of self-care and respect.
So how do we transform our relationship with boundaries themselves?
Yeah.
The sources describe it beautifully, I thought. Years of people-pleasing can leave you feeling like a house without walls, right? Where everyone is welcome anytime, anywhere, total open door. But learning to build healthy boundaries isn't about erecting like fortress walls to keep people out. Not at all. Instead, it's about creating space for real connection to grow, much like a garden fence that lets sunshine and genuine friendship flow in while keeping your roots safe and protected.
Precisely. And just as a garden needs different types of care depending on the plant, our souls need various forms of protection too. Research consistently shows that emotional boundaries safeguard our deepest feelings and our energy levels. And our sources emphasize that essential boundaries extend across many areas of life: physical space, emotional availability, material possessions, time commitments, even intellectual property. Understanding these different types helps you tailor your no much more effectively for specific situations.
And what the authors learned from experience, and studies seem to echo this, is that consistency whispers louder than shouting when it comes to maintaining these boundaries long term. Your boundaries aren't meant to be rigid prison walls. They're more like those garden fences, allowing connection while keeping you safe. Clear, consistently communicated boundaries actually strengthen connections over time. They create a foundation where trust can genuinely bloom. And sometimes, yeah, boundaries need to bend a bit with the seasons of life. Flexibility here shows strength, not weakness. Adapting to new circumstances without abandoning your core needs.
But what happens when people push back? Because let's be honest, not everyone celebrates when you find your voice. Some push back hard. And the research reveals these boundary pushers range from the unconsciously unaware to the intentionally controlling. The secret weapon here, as the sources articulate it, is staying steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. Studies confirm that giving in, even just slightly, only invites stronger waves later and reinforces their boundary-pushing behavior. Clear, calm, concise responses work far better than lengthy explanations or, getting into heated debates. Your no doesn't require an essay.
No, it really doesn't. And here's the truth that seemed to change everything for many of the authors. Boundaries aren't about building walls at all. They're fundamentally about honoring your soul's deepest needs. Research repeatedly whispers what your heart probably already knew. Strong boundaries nurture self-worth, inner peace, and genuine joy. The loudest protests often come from those who miss their, all-access pass to your life, not from those who genuinely care about your well-being. So stay gentle but firm. Like bamboo in the wind, flexible enough to bend, but strong enough to stay rooted in your truth.
This brings us to creating a personal no strategy, one that's both powerful and, well, gentle. Start by developing clear decision-making criteria. Like a compass pointing true north, these checkpoints guide your choices. Ask yourself things like, does my schedule actually have room to breathe for this? Will this feed or starve my soul's purpose? What hidden gifts might emerge beyond the obvious? Or what existing promises might I break by saying yes? Can my spirit truly afford this investment of time or energy?
That's incredibly practical. The research on effective organizational strategies confirms that having clear criteria guides teams toward aligned goals. And that wisdom works just as beautifully in our personal choices, doesn't it? Then, a highly effective tool seems to be building response templates. One author brilliantly called it the soul sandwich approach. I like that. You honor the asker's trust, speak your truth without apology, and then offer an alternative path when your heart calls for it. So, for example, instead of just a blunt no, you might say something like, wow, your thought means the world to me. Thank you for thinking of me. Right now, though, my plate's completely full, so I honestly can't give this project the love it truly deserves. May I connect you with someone else whose schedule has more space and who might be a great fit? It sounds so much better.
It does. And those words flow much easier with practice. As studies show, people truly do bounce back quickly from hearing no, much quicker than we think. This gives you genuine permission to speak your truth clearly. And, like learning to dance, saying no takes gentle, consistent practice. Those early steps might feel really wobbly. But the rhythm and confidence, they do come with time. Paradoxically, the research reveals a really beautiful truth. Saying no thoughtfully actually fuels better work. It prevents burnout, prevents that soul exhaustion, and it ultimately makes your yes, when you do give it, far more meaningful and powerful.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? We've seen how that anxious people pleaser who maybe once couldn't say no without drowning in guilt can absolutely bloom into someone who stands firmly and gracefully in their truth. The central discovery, I think, vividly illuminated by all our sources, is that saying no isn't about rejection at all. It creates sacred space. Space for your soul to truly breathe and thrive.
Yeah. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the research consistently confirms that individuals who honor their boundaries, they tend to dance through life with deeper, more authentic connections. They unleash fuller creativity, and they cultivate quieter, more peaceful minds. And these profound gifts, they truly outshine any momentary discomfort you might feel from speaking your truth.
Absolutely. Your path to finding your confident no might feel, a bit wobbly at first. That's perfectly normal. It certainly did for many of the authors in our sources. But you can start small, perhaps practicing in front of mirrors or maybe with trusted friends. Let those prepared words become your personal affirmations. Your boundaries become your quiet declaration of self-worth. Each time you honor your limits, you weave stronger bonds with others, yes, but most preciously, with yourself.
And this raises an important question, I think, for you to consider beyond this deep dive. What freedom, what deep breath peace could you personally gain from truly owning your no? And how might that quiet confidence ultimately transform your yes, to what truly matters most in your life? Imagine how that subtle shift could just melt away anxiety, one conscious, empowered choice at a time.